So children have different ways of expressing emotions, as I'm sure you guys have seen through your work with them. And what we're really trying to do is just get them to express them appropriately. A lot of times they do that through play techniques. Um, and a lot of how they learn how to appropriately express themselves is through their social interactions and through that play, especially at the earlier ages. So having appropriate play techniques and social experiences can really help them better understand how to emotionally regulate themselves. Coping with frustration requires cognitive skills as well as social skills when it's adaptive. So seeing other people model different skills for appropriate anger, a lot of times they'll see their parents or other kids express how they're expressing frustration or whatever emotion, and oftentimes we'll try to emulate that. So if they're seeing a lot of tantruming, they may be more likely to tantrum because that's just how they know how to cope with it. A lot of times they'll misperceive environmental and interpersonal information, and so it leads to more of the maladaptive ways of expressing anger and frustration, like tantruming. So really what teaching the appropriate techniques for those kids is to help them view the world in new ways and choose pro-social behaviors rather than those maladaptive ones that are often not as good in terms of their social development. And children become angry for a variety of reasons, just as like adults do. As we kind of talked about, play is really helpful for helping them learn anger management techniques and just other ways of relating socially and expressing themselves. So social play is especially important because of the interpersonal dynamics, and they're able to see how, we start to begin to see how their reactions affect other people, or what they do, how it affects another person. So if they're angry and frustrated and they go and push somebody else down, they might see that person cry and start to realize that they do have an influence on other people. So play is a learning tool that people, not just clinicians, should be able to utilize to help them. And using play, because it's salient to those kids and more of a fun way, it also helps them learn those behaviors better because it engages their interest, and it's also a mode where that they're likely to use. So it helps with the generalizability of the behavior change. Parents play a huge role in the development of emotional regulation and coping skills. My practicum site right now is with Springfield Public Schools, and I'm doing a group with some angry third graders, and a lot of them are relating to us how they see their parents deal with anger and frustration at home, and most of the times that is maladaptive. Mm-hmm. So a parental component can be really helpful when trying to address these skills in children. So it's more of a systems approach. So a lot of times just teaching the children a new technique isn't going to be enough if they're not seeing their parents appropriately dealing with anger, frustration, or whatever emotion at home. So there's lots of different things that you can do with trying to use play therapy. There's bibliotherapy, which is using books to kind of teach a lesson. There's a few different techniques, but I mean most commonly it's just to kind of teach the lesson. Other ones are like self-help books, but I mean those aren't quite as appropriate for little kiddos. All of these titles, When I Feel Angry by Cornelia Maud Spellman, The Way I Feel, Hands Are Not for Hitting, Words Are Not for Hurting, Feet Are Not for Kicking, and Teeth Are Not for Biting, are all available at Springfield Public Libraries, either at those locations or through interlibrary loan. Using puppets a lot of times, especially for littler ones, can be really helpful, whether you're using it as like a puppet show to teach, or when they're a little bit older, letting those kids use the puppets and act it out themselves. Using games, there are a variety of therapy games. using cooperation and different ways to handle frustration, looking at consequences. And then there's also mass-marketed games like Uno, Chutes and Ladders, Operation, and all of those can be good for both provoking a frustration response and then helping the kid deal with that while doing it. And with games like that, they're a little bit more readily available. They may be a little bit cheaper. The kids probably already know how to play them, so it's a little bit easier for getting it started. And then drawing. A lot of times kids will express themselves through artwork. You could have them draw how they're feeling and then draw a picture of how they'd like it to be and just kind of use that to facilitate the behavior change. And if you guys have any questions at any time, just stop me. Okay, so the turtle technique is a specific anger management technique that helps children recognize the emotion, pause, stop and think about their action while they're doing some breathing, and then respond. So it allows withdrawal from the confrontation, relaxation, and problem solving. Here's a little diagram. So the little turtle gets hit on the head with a ball. And so he recognizes that he's angry. Then he stops and thinks about it. He withdraws into his shell to breathe and brainstorm some solutions. And then he's able to act after he has the idea of what he should do. And it basically just slows down the process so the child isn't acting impulsively. Oh, I got hit on the head with the ball. Let me throw the ball back at that person to try to hurt them, to kind of get payback. So this is really, in the research it says that it can be used for people anywhere from 3 years old to an adult. With an adult, you're probably not going to frame it quite in this way, but I mean, recognizing the emotion, having them stop and pause to brainstorm solutions, and then acting would be appropriate. And just for anyone who's experiencing anger, aggression, and expressing it maladaptively. The materials that you need can vary. I mean, it can be anywhere from just you. With littler ones, having more visuals and tangible things helps make it a little bit more understandable from them because they tend to learn better when it's more concrete, when they have that visual. There's a variety of adaptations with it using bibliotherapy, puppets, art, music, games. And usually if it's being taught, it takes about one 30-minute session to teach it initially, and then maybe a few follow-up sessions for teaching the parents and just reinforcing the behavior. So it's pretty user-friendly. There's several different variations using puppets and the stories. One of them is Turtle Magic, and it's a story about Timmy Turtle, and he gets in trouble at school, and then I think he gets kicked out, and then he goes home, and his grandpa teaches him all about this turtle technique, and then he's able to go back to school and make friends and fit in better. So to take that story, you could use it with a puppet and have the puppet be Timmy Turtle and kind of acting out with it, and then gradually have the kid act it out or act out a different situation. And then they can learn how to do, depending on the age, using the actual tuck, which can be anywhere from them like putting their head down on their desk and covering their hands if they're sitting down, or if they're standing up and they're littler kids, anywhere from like completely retracting and putting their hands over their head. Can use videos with it, art, music. There's some other stories which we'll go over because that one's available on the internet for free, and some games. So you really want, with the story, you really want to help model the appropriate behavior first when you're, so letting them know that, anger is a normal feeling. Everybody experiences it, but you don't have to act out and be aggressive when you're trying to do that. And then kind of leading into teaching the turtle technique. One thing that helps me when I do that is when I start to get angry is if I stop and think and kind of try to relax so I can think of a better solution so I'm more able to get what I want rather than hurting myself and maybe even somebody else and not getting what I want at all. So just practicing steps with the kids for staying calm, using different breathing techniques. Sometimes they're okay with just saying, take 4 breaths in, hold it for a second, and then take 4 out. Other times they want more of a visual. So you might say like, okay, smell the flower and then blow out the candle. Or drink the glass of milk and then eat the Oreo. Sometimes with even littler kids, just saying like taking puppy breaths, like pretend that you're holding a puppy and you're just breathing in its soft fur and just kind of doing that over and over again. So, are there any other breathing techniques that you know of that you've tried to use with kiddos?
Not really. We haven't done too much. Like stuff like that. This is like, like our internship, and so we're just learning. And I did have an anger management group with 5th grade boys, which is over now, but some of the stuff would have been really good to know. Because I'm still new. It's just kind of like you just go and just see how it works,
And that's really a lot of what it is just trial and learning and seeing what the kids can do with it. Like I mentioned, I'm doing the anger management group now with 3rd graders, and like we were talking about breathing, and we have a poster of some Angry Birds anger management techniques, and one of them has the balloon breathing. I'm not that familiar with Angry Birds, but it has a picture of the bird all ballooned up and just teaching it that way. And then some of the other ones came up with, my grandma's told me to smell the flower, blow out the candle. And then one of the other boys was just like, well, I think about it like drinking the glass of milk and eating the Oreos. Those aren't really things that I came up with. It's just a lot of how you can learn from them too. And when it's coming from them, it's going to be more salient for them. And especially if you're going to work with that age group again in the future, presenting it using more of those terms is often helpful. So, doing role play to actually have them practice. So going through the story and then, okay, so when you're angry at school, let's pretend you're Timmy Turtle and practice using this technique. So say I was on the playground and I called you a name. So how might you use the turtle technique, and making it more concrete on examples that they might actually encounter, and just trying to really act it out and get them to actually practice using this technique. Sometimes they may refuse to use it, so you may need to model it a lot at first. They may not always comply with trying to do that, but even if they won't actually practice it for you, still exposure to the information is helpful. And then just really praising them for appropriate responses. So if you're in the group and seeing them not even necessarily do the full technique, but just part of it, just seeing them do some breathing to help cool themselves down before responding, just really trying to praise them for that behavior is really helpful, just so that they know that they're doing something right. And it's also going to help them be more likely to comply with more of the interventions in the future. And then also just trying to engage the family. So after you've taught it to the kids, like sending home a parent letter or something to help them know, this is what we're learning, and you can encourage your child to do this at home and showing them the steps. Giving handouts to kids and to the family can be helpful. And I'll show you some resources later that are available online. And I'm pretty sure I put the links to all of those resources on that paper.
Okay.
So for teaching and implementing the turtle technique, it's just an article about some of the research that's behind it, and it can help the parents better understand the technique. And also sometimes when parents see that, oh, this is something that's research-based, that it's not just something that you made up, it might help increase buy-in into it. And I mean, this is a pretty user-friendly. It gives some examples of what the children were angry about, and then talks about modeling remaining calm and teaching them how to control their anger and preparing them. So if parents were interested and had the reading level, I mean, this could be a good resource. It's pretty short. And this just has some helpful advice, and then it has a handout with the picture of the turtle.
Oh, cute.
And then it gives some really good reinforcing activities. So doing the Super Turtle Award, which is a certificate given at the end of the day noting how a child controlled their anger and impulse. And that's especially helpful if you're working with a group.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of these, I think, are more for groups. But the Turtle Power Necklace might be helpful for an anger management group with young girls. That there's a plastic turtle on a string, and they're able to keep it for the night and then bring it back the next session or the next day. And it just represents that they were able to keep their cool and they were using the techniques well. The turtle token jar can kind of be used like a token economy if you're working with like a classroom, so they could put another turtle in the jar for every time that they notice the class behaving, or multiple if there's several of them, and then work up to a bigger reward. The turtle stack, they have turtle cutouts. You could either make them out of construction paper or buy a picture of a turtle or print it out or whatever. And they just put a picture of the turtle on the wall when they notice the child, or you could even use the turtle paper to like write a note home and say, hey, great job today, Johnny. You were really able to control your anger, and I'm really proud of you, and I just thought that your parents should know, which could help reinforce it at home too. And then the turtle tote, which is a little bit more costly. The teacher sends home a bag with a stuffed turtle puppet for the evening, so the child can tell their parents about how they use the turtle technique and kind of teach it as a narrative to them. The picture of the turtle puppet that was on a few slides, I think they're a little bit pricey. Folk Manus is the company that made that one, and they make a lot of different puppets. But I saw it at a store once, and it's really cool because the head does retract back into the shell pretty easily. So it would be really helpful for teaching the story, for doing the actual tuck part. And I mean, you could even use a bag with a turtle on it, and you could probably make a puppet out of like a paper bag too, to make it a little bit more cost effective. And then here's an example of a good behavior report card. And I mean, a lot of times this technique really is used in the school, so some of those interventions and rewards are geared a little bit more towards that. But it talks about how we did a great job, and then how they can help them. And it uses the picture from the little turtle picture from the handout to help just have that continuation as the image that, this was the turtle technique to help with that. And then there's a little bit of a section of that involving parents. And then this one is a handout of just the steps. So just a quick PDF of that to print out and give to the kids, because a lot of times having that as a visual will help them remember them. It's because a lot of times when kids are actually in the session and in a situation where they're feeling frustrated, it's difficult for them to remember what they've learned. Mm-hmm. Having a visual can help trigger that memory. And then there's a song. There's lyrics with it. I don't know what the melody is. I'm not musically gifted, so I'm not going to try to sing it. But, I mean, it helps teach the song. And, I mean, especially for little kids, this could really help reinforce it after the story, because a lot of times they get really engaged when they start to hear music. So there was a turtle named Tucker. He went to school every day. He loved to run, jump, and swing, and with his friends would play. Sometimes when he got angry, his face would look real mad. He would hit, kick, and say mean words and make his friends real sad. Think like a turtle, his teacher said one day. Stop and tuck inside your shell and breathe your anger away. So the next time he got angry, he tucked inside his shell. He took three breaths and he started to think. For a solution he could tell. So there was a turtle named Tucker. He went to school every day. He learned to think like a turtle, and with his friends he would play.
Yeah.
So it kind of teaches the story that, at first he wasn't doing real well with that. Then he learned this new technique, and it helped him. And here's just some various tips for teaching the turtle technique to individuals and to groups. And there's links to a lot of different resources. Some of these are more classroom oriented, so I think this one links to a picture of a poster in a classroom. I'm not sure. I guess it's not going to open right now. But, just some environmental support, so having a copy of the story, posting visuals of the steps. The solution kit's more with a classroom, or if you have a group therapy session where just like having it like larger posters posted so they remember. And then using Tucker to teach the classroom rules, so not just anger, but that he can take care of himself, he can take care of his friends, and he can take care of his things. So just trying to teach more pro-sociality and more responsibility. With bigger groups, it can often be helpful to use the puppet and just using him to illustrate the different techniques. Being animated is really important. I'm not the most energetic or, I guess, fun person ever, especially when I'm trying to present. And it's really helpful with the kids if you're able to get down on their level and be more animated and show your excitement, because it really helps them buy into it too. Singing the song, singing if you're angry and you know it, so if you're happy and you know it, and you take a breath instead of clap your hands to help reinforce it. There's some other stories. A mouse was mad, and just seeing how they use the deep breathing and other exercises and what they like from the story, what would be helpful for them, and just like getting their input about what's helpful for them, because it helps them feel more in control of the situation too. And if they're able to tell you what they think will work for them, they're going to be more likely to use it too. So with smaller groups, using a parachute and having them go in and take the deep breaths, and then the group counts, and then the kid can come out. Sock puppets, different ways to tuck. So the inside of box or calming area is kind of like taking a timeout or going to a cool down area. A lot of times it'll be like in the corner of a room, just kind of getting them out of the big circle of kids when they're frustrated so they can cool down rather than having somebody else try to escalate it. Inside your clothing, a lot of times that's frowned upon in classrooms, so it's really just would depend on the teacher or whomever who's trying to teach it. And putting your hands in front of their face. I've seen other suggestions where it's just as simple as kind of going like this, which might be a little bit more helpful for an older student, especially if they're in the classroom at their desk. So it's not as noticeable as like a complete tucking down, which may be more fun for like a 3 or 4-year-old. And then there's some other visual information and techniques for breathing. Smelling the flower, blowing the petals would be similar to the smelling the flower, blow out the candle. I'm not really sure what the pretzel or the drain are, and didn't really explain those on this handout. And then star breathing, so stop, take a breath, and relax. And also kind of focusing on what some of their cues in their body are of them being angry can help them. If they know when they start to get angry that they need to take a breath, because a lot of kids will say that, that they do tense up or their face gets red or they feel really tight through here and in their arms. But when they take the deep breath, that kind of helps relax those muscles, which can help de-escalate their anger. And then there's a link to the Tucker Turtle story. So you can just print this off the internet. And I'll go through it a little bit more later, but some of the visuals are a little bit corny, but it does teach it, and I don't know that that especially younger kiddos are going to pick up on how corny some of the pictures are. But I like that the story did use the visuals from that handout to have those cues. That's that overlap. And then at the end, there's some more tips for teachers about it. And then having bigger images of the turtle handout. And then just something that they could even post in their classroom about just helping them think of a solution to their anger. So, which would be a helpful part of learning the turtle technique, because the last step is coming up with a solution. But if they're not front-loaded with what are some good solutions to solving the anger rather than hitting, kicking, throwing things, they're not going to be as likely to pick a helpful one. So getting a teacher or other adults, asking the person nicely to play or to do what the person wants them to, which may not always work. If they're being picked on, they could try to ignore it. They could go play somewhere else, saying please stop, or saying please if they're asking them to do something. Sharing, trading a toy or item, waiting and take turns, just a variety of other things depending on what the child's triggers usually are. So I mean, if it's more that the kid wants to play with what he wants to play with when he wants to, and he throws a tantrum when he doesn't get his way, some of the pleas or the trading or the sharing might be more helpful. But if it's a kid who's being picked on, those interventions aren't going to be quite as helpful. So a lot of it really is just taking these general techniques and really applying it to the student. And with using some of these turtle stories, you could easily adapt it to the individual child and make it more applicable to them. So Tucker Turtle is getting up angry and acting out because he's getting picked on, or because other kids aren't sharing, or whatever the problem tends to be. And then sometimes, especially with kids who may be a little bit at lower developmental ages, using actual photographs of the kids acting out the story can be really helpful, because they can see, okay, that's me, so this is what I'm supposed to do. And this might be more helpful for kids who are on the spectrum, because a lot of times those visuals are really important, and a lot of times they'll try to use social types of stories to help teach appropriate behaviors, and those are usually pretty effective. And then, and there's some family tools that, if you're working with parents to try to help reinforce this, or there's other stuff going on, that you could refer them to this website, and there's some different modules. So teaching your child to identify and express emotions, teaching your child to cooperate with requests, make the most of playtime, responding to your child's bite, teaching your child about feelings, understanding your child's behavior, reading your child's cues from birth to age 2, and teaching your child to become independent with daily routines. So, and all of these are freely available resources for those parents. And then here's some more resources, and they're available in English and in Spanish. So making a connection, there's a PowerPoint, there's scripts, activities and role plays that are all available, and we have the English part and the Spanish part. So module 2 is making it happen. Why do children do what they do? Why do children do what they do? Teach me what to do. Facing the challenge, parts 1 and 2. And then there's a family workbook. So those are going to be really helpful for getting the parents to involved more, especially if they're already motivated to be involved. They may not necessarily be the most helpful if the parents aren't interested. And not all parents will be.
No.
So this is the story that is available online. So Tucker Turtle takes time to tuck and think. Tucker Turtle is a terrific turtle. He likes to play with his friends at Let Lake School. And then just trying to, especially if you're more one-on-one or even in a smaller group, trying to engage the children in a conversation while you're reading the story can be helpful to help them relate it more to themselves. So, like, do you like to play with your friends at school? Oh, that's really cool. What kinds of things do you like to play? But sometimes things happen that can make Tucker really mad. Do you ever get angry? Well, what kinds of things make you angry? And just really trying to draw them into the story can be helpful. When Tucker got mad, he used to hit, kick, or yell at his friend. His friends would get mad or upset when he hit, kicked, or yelled at them. When are some times that you've hit, kicked, or yelled? Do your friends get mad at you? Have you gotten into trouble? When you hit, kicked, or yelled at them, were you able to get what you wanted? And just kind of going through and seeing how those behaviors work for them. Sometimes with kids, if it really is just about getting revenge, that might not be the most, they may have gotten exactly what they wanted, they just wanted to get payback. Mm-hmm. Sure, that could have gotten them in trouble too, but I mean, if the motivator really was just revenge, it may not be the most helpful. So, Tucker now knows a new way to think like a turtle when he gets mad. So in step 1, he realizes that he's angry because something happened. What are some things that make you angry? So next, he learns to stop and keep his hands, body, and yelling to himself. So, like even talking to them about visualizing a stop sign or some other indicator, like if it's just like their mom sticking up or a teacher sticking up a hand or something. Just having some visual that they try to think of when they get angry and are trying to stop themselves can be helpful. He can tuck inside his shell and take 3 deep breaths to calm down. And then kind of encouraging the kid to take 3 deep breaths with you. So, okay, that's 1. That's 2. And then just really counting them out and making sure that the student is trying to do that with you. Tucker can then think of a solution or way to make it better. So what are some ways that might work for you to, when you're angry because somebody's been picking on you or for whatever reason? And just really kind of going through. In this step, it might help just to generate a long list of ideas and then go back and evaluate whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. Tucker's friends are happy when he plays nicely and keeps his body to himself. Friends also like it when Tucker uses nice words or has a teacher help him when he's upset. Do you think your friends will like it if you're playing nicely and not yelling at them? And then maybe even putting it back on them, like when your friends are angry at you, how does it make you feel when they're yelling at you or throwing things or hitting or kicking or whatever? And maybe seeing if they've ever went to get a teacher when they've needed help and seeing how that works for them. With some students, you may need to do a little bit what tattling versus appropriate reporting is. And I think there's some resources on Pinterest about the worksheet, and I don't have that link to this presentation, but I have seen it on there. So that, tattling is more of just telling to share, but nobody's hurt or in trouble or anything. Whereas reporting, you want to do if you or somebody else is hurt or you can't solve the problem on your own. I think it's just, because a teacher's not going to want to try to handle a bunch of kids just tattling, and it's really trying to equip the kids to solve what they can themselves. Mm-hmm. So maybe one of the kids on the playground says, "You're mean." Sure, does it hurt your feelings, but that's something that they can try to deal with. If it's more of a bullying type of thing and it's repeated, that's a separate issue, and that would need to be something that's more reported.